Hi, everybody. I really want to welcome Abe Foxman, the longtime former national director of the Anti-Defamation League, a friend for many years to Behind the Headlines. Thanks for being with me, Abe. And this is a very difficult time to be speaking to you, but I just thought your wisdom and experience was really needed after the events of last Wednesday in the US Capitol, and the concern that maybe it's not just a blip and maybe there is more to come. And I just want maybe from you most of all to come away with some sense of perspective and context and sense of what might be ahead and whether what we should be worried about and how worried we should be. So maybe the place to start, Abe, is with a comparison or a parallel that was kind of semi-drawn by Arnold Schwarzenegger, who invoked Kristallnacht, somebody who grew up in Austria, was a child in Austria, raised in Austria, whose father was a volunteer member of the Nazi Party, and he kind of drew a parallel. He said last Wednesday was America's day of broken glass, but then he also later in that clip said, "I'm sure it's all going to be all right." Just tell us what to make of that comparison.
Well, I'm not comfortable with comparisons to the Holocaust. I worry that Holocaust trivialization is as serious as Holocaust denial, but let's leave that aside for the moment. Kristallnacht should have been a wake-up call to Germany and beyond. It wasn't. I hope there is a significant difference. I hope that what happened at the Capitol a week ago, Wednesday, is a wake-up call to America. We had a wake-up call in 9/11. It brought America's attention and the world's as well, but especially America, that we're not as secure, not as immune as we think we are. And America did take action to protect its borders, to protect its citizens. We changed our way of life. We gave up some liberties. More recently, the American Jewish community had its wake-up call, I would say in two parts, one in Charlottesville. I woke up to see how deep the anti-Semitism is, and then Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was really the wake-up call to the American Jewish community that we need to be concerned, that we need to be vigilant, that we need to secure ourselves. And I would say, David, I hope that what happened in Washington is a wake-up call to the American people that there is a threat, and the threat is domestic, and the threat is hate, and the threat is much bigger, deeper, wider than most Americans believe and accept. Sadly to say, there are still segments in America, in our society, that are still fighting the Civil War. So that it is very, very deep. So I don't think it's the end of it. I don't think, God forbid, it will. What will happen here is what happened in Germany in World War II. And I also see signs of America taking action. So I am an optimist, although I think it's important for us to realize how deep, how many vigilantes, how many paramilitary premises, racists, and anti-Semite this country has. David, for the many years that I was at the ADL, we took the pulse of hatred in this country. And I don't think there are 70 million racist bigots in this country who supported Donald Trump. But there are millions. Every time we took polls, we found 10 to 12% of the American people deeply infected with anti-Semitism. That's 30 million people. When our polls indicated that 30% of the American people still believe we're responsible for killing Christ, that's 100 million Americans. Or when 30% believe the Jews are not loyal to this country, that's 100 million Americans. So it is there, it's deep. First thing is we need to recognize that it exists before we seriously deal with it.
You said a lot there, Abe, and I hope people watching this will listen to that very carefully. if you've now called attention to it and you've said it's there and you've told everyone to recognize it, what is it that America should do? You have this sense of some very in-your-face extremists, some of them really, really dangerous, and then maybe a somewhat muddled mob behind them. I don't know how vast, in an era where the capacity to misrepresent and to fill people's heads with foul lies, it's so much easier. I mean, the Nazis were brilliant propagandists in an era where it was much harder to propagandize, and yet motivated and created a climate that either participated or indulged the most terrible crimes. How can America effectively tackle this problem once it's acknowledged it?
Well, David, what happened was a perfect storm. We had in this country this underlying, brewing, simmering frustration, anger, hatred that was there. It would erupt from time to time, but nothing the way we're seeing it today. And they also began to be, I would even say, frightened because of the changing nature of the United States. We became a multiracial society, which was anathema to them. So this anger, this frustration that was there needed some instigators, which for many years they didn't have. They didn't have the means to communicate. They would do it, but not very successfully. Came the internet and came social media. And this was a gift to all the bigots, because all of a sudden they were able to interact, communicate, recruit, reinforce each other. And so while social media and internet were a gift to most of us, in the sense that it gave us better education, information, communication, interaction, it also provided a superhighway for bigots who began to have a vehicle which they never had before. And the other thing that was missing was a leader. In all these years, they had many leaders. They had the David Dukes, they had some Spanglers, but nothing serious. They woke up one morning to find the President of the United States as a leader. And so the coming together of the ability to interact, to communicate, to recruit, and the fact that they had in the White House someone who sent messages that were akin to their beliefs brought about this explosion. So what's next? And in this period, by the way, we're in the process of destroying civility, and we've almost destroyed truth. So, okay, we need to change the leader, but we also need to understand that removing the leader does not necessarily remove the lies. You remove the liar, but that doesn't mean that the lies aren't still there. And we need to begin to struggle with social media. I remember, you remember, after 9/11, American society struggled. How do you balance security with our freedoms? I think we need to begin to struggle with how do we protect freedom of speech, but protect our civility. I think that's our first challenge. Our first challenge is to get rid of the leader who is the liar. Number two is there needs to be consequences, because if there are no consequences to that behavior, then it becomes acceptable. I think we're seeing signs in America today that there are consequences, and again, they may not be as dramatic in the global sense, but when they take away the PGA tournaments from the Trump empire, when corporations say they will no longer support candidates who supported this effort in Washington, this is a beginning of America coming to terms with the hatred and the lies. And then we're going to have to deal with social media to see where the balance is, so that it does not overwhelm us and it is not a superhighway to feed and fuel the hatred and the animosity.
Abe, what do you mean by get rid of the leader? President Trump's term is over in just a few days. So is there something specific other than the one praise orderly process of transition?
one needs to deliver a message that there are consequences to this kind of behavior. One needs to tarnish him. He may still have aspirations of leadership. So I think it is important that we take whatever actions, whether it's impeachment, there are all kinds of vehicles, but I think the American public needs to show the American people that this behavior is not acceptable, will not be tolerated.
You mean, Abe, he shouldn't be allowed to leave office in the normal way? He should either be impeached or some kind of safeguard or some kind of mechanism that ensures he cannot return?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Explain for us the degree to which you think he is culpable. You said to me after Pittsburgh, we spoke in October 2018, and you talked about his unintentional anti-Semitism, that he would be horrified at the notion that he was an anti-Semite, but he was emboldening that mindset. And I assume the same goes for emboldening the kind of deadly extremism that we saw a week ago. But elaborate on that. Why is he culpable?
He's a demagogue, and a demagogue is a danger to democracy. And we talked a year or two ago. I said to you, anything that threatens democracy threatens the Jewish community. We are protected by democracy. But we saw that his words and actions undermined democracy. He's an authoritarian with all kinds of psychological issues, which I won't go into. But what's important to us is he emboldened the bigots. That means the Charlottesville 200 existed before Donald Trump. And all these bigots and racists and white supremacists have been there before Donald Trump. And they will be there after Donald Trump. But what the Trumpism, what Donald Trump did is he gave him the chutzpah, he gave him the license, he emboldened them that it's okay now. The Charlottesville 200 knew beforehand, they didn't surface all these years, they didn't become anti-Semites or racist or white supremacists overnight by the election of Donald Trump. But he sent the message that it's okay, and therefore they surfaced. And here, the same thing. He said it's okay. He said it in all his rallies. When you look at this phenomenon of rallies, he was building, he was encouraging, he was empowering them. And he said from the beginning, listen, I don't know how quickly we forget, he said in 2016, if I don't win, it would be a rigged election. He said when he didn't get the third Emmy for his show, for his TV show, he said it was rigged. And he announced here too that if he doesn't win this election, it's rigged. So he fueled it, he built it, he encouraged the lie. And the attacks on judiciary, the attacks on the media, all undermined elements of our democracy. So yeah, he needs not only to go, but he needs to go tarnished.
Well, I'm speaking to you from Jerusalem, Abe, and the last couple of sentences that you said cannot fail but to echo a little bit in Israel. Let's issue parallels in that case, but let me say to you that our Prime Minister, who I have much praise for keeping this country relatively safe in a toxic neighborhood for many years, but who is certainly divisive internally, has been battering away at some of the hierarchies of our democracy. Do you see echoes? Do you see dangers in Israel?
David, I think what we've come to realize is that none of us are as perfect as we'd like to be or think we are. And we are not immune. We're not immune. My God, the Jewish people woke up to realize that words matter, that it matters what we say to us. Not we used to talk about words matter out there, but they mattered to us. And we witnessed the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, the Prime Minister of Israel, by the Jewish people in the Jewish state. So yeah, none of us, and there are people in the United States who think, authoritarian governments, populist governments, coups, that's not by us. And the truth is, we're not immune. So no, Israel is also not immune. The forces, the frustrations, the anxieties exist by you too, in Israel as well. And we see manifestations which are global, which are an attack on basic democratic institutions and values. And so sadly, no. Look, there are demonstrations and demonstrations. And Washington last Wednesday was not a demonstration. It was a mob. We witnessed in the United States demonstrations, what people would say come from the left, but they were demonstrations about a cause, not to overthrow the government, not to destroy. They wanted certain things. They used violence. Okay, so but David, we're not immune here, and you're not immune there.
Are you confident that the next few days will pass relatively smoothly, or are you not certain at all?
I think we're ready. I think, again, the wake-up call is such. It would be a sad sight to see Washington under siege, under positive siege, but under siege. When we already see the National Guard flowing in, tens of thousands, there'll be no people in the streets. Wow, 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 what a sad moment in our history. Yeah, we'll have a peaceful transition, but it'll be marred by the visual of an armed camp, of a country under siege. And I think that too, hopefully, will be part of the wake-up call that this is not America. But in order for this not to be America, we're going to have to work, and we have to rebuild civility. We have to rebuild respect. And probably the most difficult thing to rebuild is respect for truth. Look, I worry about truth, and not only in the general term. Anti-Semitism is a lie. That's what it is. Anti-Semitism is the big lie based on a lie. And our defense has always been the truth. When you say the Jews this and the Jews that, our answer was, you tell them the truth. Somebody says you're a dirty Jew, you show them that, look who you are, what you are. We've destroyed that element of truth. And I don't know how we begin, and the media is part of it, our institutions are part of it. This, I think his legacy, that's the most terrible, horrific thing that he has left us in America, and that is the destruction of truth. There is no truth. This man lied as if it was the truth. And for a democracy, a democracy can't survive if there is no truth. And I don't know what the answer is. I know it's a strong media. I know it's a strong democratic institutions and judiciary, but it also needs the courage of good people to stand up. Senator Romney said it was almost too simple. And he said, well, you have to tell the bigots the truth. Well, that's easier said than done. I just saw a video of 15 minutes of interviews of Trump supporters. David, it's scary. It is scary what they believe. And how one begins to undo this is a major challenge, but I don't think we have any choices. I don't think we have any options. We need to bring back civility, and we need to bring back respect for truth.
I have two more questions for you, Abe. One is an Israeli selfish question, which is, this country, first of all, the leadership of this country has been very openly allied with the Trump administration. And Israel, I would say consensually, sees itself as having benefited hugely from many of the administration's policies, even though Israelis have been very divided always about Trump, the person, and Trump, the president. But on the policies that related to Israel, overwhelming appreciation for many of them. So now we have this disgraced, iniquitous president leaving office. Where does that leave Israel in terms of its bipartisan support in America, which it deserves and needs and has always maintained with ups and downs? Where does this leave us? Are we tarnished? Have we lost half of the American political spectrum?
I don't think so. David, where does one stand where one sits? And and so I saw the difference between, say, the American Jewish community and the Israeli community. So where Israel sat, it made sense to stand with a president, with all his foibles, with all his faults, who stood up for Israel. And so and I think here too, we understood. The American Jewish community, which sits here, was worried about America's democracy. And so based on where it sits, it stood with the Democratic Party and against Donald Trump. I think everybody at this point is interested in healing and coming together. And again, at the end of the day, the interests of the United States and Israel are so tied, so close, that I don't think this is going to be a period of vindictiveness or we're going to get even. I think they're going to move ahead. Look, it was troubling, it was disturbing, but I think most of us understood. Look, there are Americans who voted for Donald Trump, not because they're bigots, because of the pocketbook, because of evangelicalism, because of all kinds of other issues. And they too will have to come to terms with a different America, at least for the next 4 years.
Do you want to end on something? I mean, you weren't unoptimistic in the tail end of that answer. Can you give us some room for optimism as an American, as somebody Jewish, and as somebody who loves Israel?
David, Golda Meir once said, Jews don't have the luxury of being pessimists. And you're talking to somebody who as a child survived the Shoah, and 1.5 million Jewish children perished. So I don't have that luxury to be pessimistic about democracy or Jewish life. So yeah, I am an optimist. I think we've come a long way. We'll overcome this, but we'll have to work on it. You know, we can't take things for granted. We can't say, oh, you know, it won't happen here or it's not that serious. So I think there's going to need to be vigilance. There's going to need to be taken. We need to take hatred more seriously. We need to take our democratic institutions and values more seriously. We're going to need to work at it. We're going to need to be vigilant and not wait for George to do it, because George is not going to do it. But again, I think the better parts of us as Jews, as Americans, as Israelis, as citizens will come forth, and has. We've faced challenges. We've faced very serious challenges, and we've come out ahead. And again, I think in terms of the American Jewish community, Israeli Jewish community, I think we'll in the days ahead we'll find ways to re-embrace and to reinforce each other.
Abe, my friend, thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom. Be well and help America heal. Thank you.
Stay safe.
You
Stay
too.
safe.
Thank you.
God bless.